Welcome to Prime Suspects, alongside Adam Bjorn and Prime Sports co-founder Joe Brennan Jr., and back in action after a superlative guest hosting performance last week by Jack Fitzpatrick. I'm your host, Matt Landis. Adam, Nixon 4 is no more, and the Golden Knights are knocking on Lord Stanley's door. So through 3 games apiece, how have the NBA and NHL finals been for the book?
All right, the NBA was phenomenal the first 2 games, especially the second game. I mean, just the money just expected the Spurs to tie that up 1-1. So that ended up really well. Did need the Knicks last night, down big early, came back at halftime. I just thought, all right, they got this. And then obviously third quarter, they get done, come back in the fourth. And, just a little bit more hunger, I think, from the Spurs to get that over the line and see where that's at. So far, so good in that. And the hockey, again, Knights are up 2-1 at home. Good results early on. No, obviously not the sweats you get on the NBA, but this has been a real good series of betting, good two-way action, and the live betting's been phenomenal. So we need the Knicks, we need the series, we need the Knights, but I wouldn't mind both of these going 7 games the way this action's been, just for the hell of it. Why not? But, it's been 2 really good series, which, sometimes you just don't get them. You get to the finals, and I think all the way along there was conversations about, well, once the West gets through, the West wins. It's not looking like that right now. So good to see the way they're playing out right now.
And for all the action we've seen across the NBA and NHL finals, the main finals action this past Sunday was at the French Open, where Alexander Zverev won his first Grand Slam, with the number 1 and 2 ranked Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz absent from Roland Garros. How was the action?
So I do want to correct you there. Sinner actually got beat. I mean, he was there. He did show up. He did get beaten down.
Absent from the finals, yes.
Yeah, I will be honest. This is probably the most lackluster French Open that I've been a part of myself. Now, I got a lot of shit on my plate, but this didn't touch anywhere of recent years gone by, all these kind of things. Yes, there was volume, there was decent, whatnot, but it almost felt like the French Open didn't exist this year for me. It was almost like the finals and it was done. I didn't, get early action on any of that stuff. And there was no real major sweats. I was checking it. I was looking at the charts to potentially put out data plays and all these kind of things. And it felt very, very lackluster. So again, good final, good opportunity for 2 players that hadn't won before. That's always a good thing to sort of spread the wealth of trophies, because literally for, 30 years, there's been 5, 6 guys that have kind of dominated all those things. So yeah, I mean, it's a new regime and let's see what happens from here. But it does help when you have sort of one of the better players in the world injured, and then the other one just, getting beat purely looked like fatigue sort of early on in the series.
And Joe, let's bring you into the fold here. From the busy sports calendar over the past week to the World Cup kicking off in just a couple days, and Texas Tech quarterback Brendan Sorsby being ruled eligible yesterday, despite placing thousands of bets, including 40 on his own team. What's catching your attention the most right now?
I guess since there was a lot of enthusiasm pre-show about Brendan Sorsby and the Texas justice system, maybe we should have a brief chat about that. I do think it's kind of cheesy and obvious when a state district judge somehow issues a ruling against those damn Yankees and the NCAA and et cetera to allow a quarterback to be able to play his season there in Lubbock, when I have to say, every time either ESPN or somebody like that has an article online that further catalogs what Brendan's betting activities were, I was just like, all right, well, yeah, he's an addict. And second of all, he probably shouldn't be anywhere near football, right? At least not in the NCAA. This is a kind of a pathetic homer decision that I don't think is going to stand up if somebody isn't immediately running for injunctive relief to the federal courts. Texas really does seem to have an interesting judicial bench down there. They're the center of so much action, and this just seems to be one more kind of interesting decision that will pretty soon be packaging tomorrow's fish and chips. Regarding like the sports action, my biggest concern right now is my chair as mayor of Toutville, because I have my 2 preseason favorites right now in the finals. The Knicks, until last night, were looking pretty damn good, but Carolina Hurricane, I'm a little concerned about that. I'm surprised that Vegas Golden Knights are giving them the rough ride that they are, to the point where now Frederik Andersen was pulled after giving up 4 goals on 16 shots the other night. And for whatever it is, Rod the Bod Brindamore is keeping it a secret who he's going to be starting between the pipes here in game 4, which Carolina has to be treating as a must-win game. So, I mean, who cares about the fans of Carolina? I just want to be right, since I picked them to win it all. Meanwhile, I think it is really kind of cool over in the NBA, and suddenly, like it seems like in the rest of the world, it's cool to be Catholic between the Spurs with their Salesian sisters of St. Don Bosco showing up to bless, Wemby and the rest of the Spurs home games. And then last night, Spike Lee, noted Catholic Spike Lee, wearing a Pope Leo the 14th autographed Knicks jersey, courtside, didn't restrain him at all from jumping off the bench and actually jumping into the game and harassing the refs. But suddenly it's cool to be Catholic in the NBA for all of our analytics, all of our, being able to trust in the numbers and everything about the game. We're all turning our game over to the supreme being in the universe. But I expected last night's game was a mere road bump, speed bump in the road for the Knicks. And unfortunately, we're going to be listening to New York fans probably go on and on and on about how they're such a great team here when they roll to the championship victory.
All right, with that, we'll pivot from Joe's preseason prognostications and a betting quarterback in the news to 3 betting products in the news over the last week. Bet365 went free to play with a collectible card fantasy game timed to the World Cup. DraftKings launched Moonshot, a multiplier-based live betting mechanic for baseball. And New York startup SpeedLabs raised $6.5 million to build AI-generated in-game momentum markets triggered by live events. Let's start with product 1 here. Bet365 using its free-to-play game to enter states where it can't take bets, essentially a play to acquire customers. Adam, how much of this is smart market entry, and how much of it feels like a stretch if they want to be considered a more serious sportsbook?
So let's give kudos to Bet365, because I think they've been one of the smarter ones in this whole process of the European beings. I mean, you've had 888 Holdings, Betfred, Kindred, Tipico, Supergroup, all come and go. And I think we saw very early on that Bet365 was being very methodical, very strategic. I think now they're in about 17 states, 3 with iGaming. They just went into Michigan earlier this year. And now they're sort of seeing what everybody else is doing with going into other states. So they're kind of going backwards to the fantasy world in preparation of building databases and all those other things, versus others running into the prediction world and building databases and things like that were fantasy before and all that whatnot. Of the products, this one actually seems a little bit more entertaining, a little bit of interactive with the card world, and that's sort of taking off a bit more these days, getting back into that collectible world and things like that. I'm very visual on a lot of these things, so understanding what the product does and how it feels, whatnot. When we get on to the next one, I'm a little lost. But this one, I think, is, of the 3 products, is just something, again, that they've been doing something very methodical. They're obviously going to expand this into other sports or other areas. It's just not a World Cup thing. It's just a timing aspect of it. But yeah, I mean, I think them as a group, and for us international folks that have been kicked out of bet £3.65 25 years ago, watching them come into the US and do the way they do it, kudos to them and how they're developing this out. And I think this one's a creative and good idea of what they're trying to do.
And Joe, let's get your thoughts on this as well, because it could be interpreted as Bet365 chasing the casual fan DraftKings and FanDuel cornered years ago through DFS, now through a Pokemon card meets fantasy format. So how well does a product like this convert casual users into bettors versus adding noise to an already crowded ecosystem?
And they don't convert well to bettors. It's been proven time and again over the duration of the online industry. And it's not just in sports or fantasy, but in poker and elsewhere. The free-to-play model converts very poorly to real money players. Why? Well, it's so easy to be able to play for real money in the United States. There's nothing preventing somebody from playing for real money in the United States. Unfortunately, the free-to-play games tend to skew young, incredibly young, not the kind of people that we want to be drawing into this industry. So while I think the design, like the product design itself, is really interesting, and clearly it's doffing its cap more towards the fast fantasies and prize picks and underdogs of the world in DFS plus, rather than what the product that like FanDuel and DraftKings really cut their teeth on. I just don't see how, right now, being an incredibly late entry into fantasy, first of all, and then with a free to play game is going to do all that much. I really don't think they're going to generate that much of a big database. But then again, Denise Coates is worth the gross national product of Great Britain, and I'm not. So she's a smart lady, and they must know something that we don't.
And we'll see what you guys know and what you think about product 2 here, DraftKings Moonshot, where bettors place a single wager before a plate appearance and choose a target multiplier payout. Then the wager builds in value as positive outcomes accumulate toward that target in a live betting mechanic, not a parlay, where one dynamic bet escalates throughout the game. Adam, you alluded to being a bit lost on this one. I'm trying to wrap my head around it as well as we have this conversation. It seems like Moonshot can be viewed as DraftKings wrapping a casino-style escalation mechanic around live baseball with the build toward a payout structure, more slot machine than sportsbook. So from a trading and margin point of view, how does this get prices and what's the customer appeal?
Yeah, so this is going through this, and this is where I'm saying very visual, like to be able to see it in my hand and understand what the hell's going on here. Because first I thought it was like an open parlay where you add escalations, and then it was like, is it cash out style? And by the end of it and reading it and doing a little research on it, I'm not quite sure what they're trying to do here. So I don't know what the margin is. I don't know what the additional stuff is. I don't know what the hell Moonshot has to do with this. It's, I didn't know if it was going back to the aviator game where, you build your parlay that goes up and then at some point it crashes on you. Maybe that's the action of it, but this one went straight over my head. I've got no idea what they're trying to achieve here.
All right, well, Joe, we'll see what you can add here, teeing you up with the notion that a few months ago, DraftKings launched DraftKings Replay, building on historical MLB pitches, blurring the line between betting and casino, with Moonshot seemingly pushing further in that direction. How much of this is product innovation that genuinely serves fans, and how much of it strikes you as DraftKings engineering for engagement in service of itself?
So before I address that part, I will say also, I like to think of myself as a fairly intelligent person, but when your product presentation is a press release rather than a product, that I find it hard also. I struggle with it since it doesn't seem to be really tangible. Is it really a product right now, or is this still in pitch form? Like, did they have this in a pitch meeting the beginning of the week and they said, let's get this the hell out there right now. This sounds hot. Devil's in the details. And so far, like 2 out of 2 bookmakers on this show can't even begin to visualize what the F this thing is. But I mean, what it does show is like, look, DraftKings is at least through this effort, they are conceding that what the majority of their bettors, the majority of their customers want is they want jackpot payouts. That should come as no surprise to anybody when you look at the popularity of SGP. If you're under the age of 35, you're betting parlays, right? You're not doing single game bets. So finding new, differentiated, maybe creative ways in order to provide jackpot experiences to customers, I think you're going to see more and more of this from everybody in the industry. It's just, normally tell me how great the omelet is when you're serving it to me, not when you haven't even bought the fucking eggs from the store. This seems like a really premature announcement, like run it up the flagpole kind of thing. And I don't know, I found it confusing myself.
All right, we'll see if we can get more clarity here on product 3, New York City startup SpeedLabs building what it calls momentum markets. The pitch being that when a momentum swing, such as an injury or a pivotal score, happens in a game, sportsbooks only reprice existing markets, with SpeedLabs AI creating entirely new markets from that moment. SpeedLabs CEO Nick Meter says sportsbooks are being lapped by prediction markets, which mint new categories weekly. So, Adam, SpeedLabs is essentially pitching a B2B live market engine to both operators and prediction markets. As an operator, how much of the bottleneck in live betting is market creation, and how much is something else, such as execution speed, risk management, or regulatory lift?
I'm a little less confused on this one, but trying to understand sort of where the angle's at, because one, they're leaning into micro betting, differentiating micro betting, which micro betting's kind of getting a rap on the knuckles these days as well. Then you have the aspect of, they said prediction markets running around the sports books. But the prediction markets, and correct me if I'm wrong, 95% of their volume is on pick winners, spreads, sportsbooks product, which is why we're having the conversation of them really being sportsbooks, exchanges, whatnot of that nature. So it's kind of, what are they leaning into? And what I'm noticing more and more and more as I get into some of these pitches and these rooms and these decks is they're all just building the same shit over and over and over and calling it a new name. Like these kind of products existed, I think and Kiro or something in recent years pitched a thing where they a player would get on fire and they'd say, would this player shoot a 3-pointer in the next 2 minutes and stuff like that? Like it's just the same stuff getting spiraled over and over and over, and they're building it quicker and quicker. And obviously in the AI world and development and all these kind of things, the struggle is, where do you put this stuff? Do you put it as a standalone product and just go after player acquisition, affiliate kind of stuff? Do you plug it into your UI as a widget where someone's watching a particular game and all these new things are popping up as it's happening? Because generally you're only interested in these things if you're actually watching the game on TV or on your phone or something like that. But they raise money. They obviously have an idea, and there's people out there putting money into these things to sort of see what they can do and where they can take off from. And that's kind of been one of my weaknesses, I guess, is sitting back and just doing things the way they've been done and, taking bets and all those kind of things and not chasing the bells and whistles and the enterprise value, corporation building, some of those aspects of it, which I look back at and go, maybe I should have run off with one of these ideas or spun into these things or whatnot. And then I'm like, nah, I just like taking bets. So there's kind of the balance of, where does all this live? And there's just so many people building stuff out there now that integrating into sports betting platforms is monumental tasks. A lot of the sports betting platforms are 100 years old, and being able to plug some of these things in seems to take forever. Now, I think we take a lot longer than what others do. However, there just seems, I hear more and more, well, we've spoken to DraftKings, we've spoken to FanDuel, and they have an 18-month runway of product integration and these kind of things. So is it going to become another segment of just little apps that, are called, I can't even remember what they're called, momentum apps or something, or I get it all, but you can only plug so much into the UI and see how it fits. But I get it if everyone's looking for the new flashy thing. But Joe just hit on a point that actually came up in a conversation last week. People want to bet a toothpick to win a lumberyard. That mentality has been globally forever and ever. Dealt with it in Australia in the 90s, see it in the Caribbean, 10, 15 years ago. It's the same model in LATAM. That's hitting the US in sports betting now. It's existed forever in lotteries. You've had lotteries here for a long time, and the amount of money spent on lotteries in state by state by state, it's the same thing. That's now converting to sports betting, and people are working out, how do I get that 30-team parlay or that, all these things? When you have a product like this, it's a single play product, and people really aren't chasing that single play product right now. They're looking for things that can convert and layer up and stuff like that. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, based on what I heard from you there, if I were to create a momentum market, I would price it as an overwhelming favorite that we will hear the phrase old wine in a new bottle from Joe in the next couple minutes. But Joe, before we get there, I will tee you up by noting that the investor thesis here is that sportsbooks have been coasting on the same market templates for years, while prediction markets run circles around them on novelty. So what's your read on Meter's statement, the categories being lapped? And if SpeedLabs can deliver, which type of operator adopts this first between traditional books and prediction markets?
That kid doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He's so full of shit. He's not old enough to drink old wine in a new bottle. But let's just dissect it. All he's doing is he's virtue signaling, and I'm waving my flag with prediction markets, which I imagine he had to as part of his investor pitch, as well as lace AI throughout every other utterance in order to raise $6.5 million in seed capital. But as far as I can tell, the only thing he has is AI generated artwork about what his product is. Let's dissect what his fucking product is. Okay, since he's such a smart ass about how he's lapping the rest of the world right now. He's got a marketing machine, because when you chop off the front end of the content in these little blurbs in his AI generated art windows, all it is like marketing intro to existing spot betting market. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not spot betting. Now it's micro betting. Oh no, now it's momentum betting, right? It's a marketing engine. There's absolutely nothing new as far as like the wagering part of this. Okay. We've got in-game bets that handle everything of the examples that he's talking about. So he's either full of shit, lying, or he doesn't know the industry, which that would be my bet. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, right? And the thing is, what was it? It was like 2 weeks ago. We had another company. They were coming out of Polymarket, some Y Combinator company. And it was like, you can make a parlay out of anything kind of thing. Put together your own parlays. Like, how is that any different from anything that is on the market right now? Make your own bet. Geez, that's what, 15 years old now? That like Skybet was doing that. And like, it's the root of SGPs. There's nothing new. It's just a bunch of little punk kids who are now using like the vacuum space behind the wave of prediction markets coming in here now to wave their flag and say like, we're with prediction markets and we're going to revolutionize the industry and we're lapping sports books. I've yet to see a product that is pushed by the prediction markets that isn't a 100% replication of a betting product that's on an existing sports book. Their money lines, their futures, combos. Those are parlays. So everything he said in his little freaking annoying statement is patently false. And so the fact that people paid $6.5 million to bankroll somebody whose thesis is vaporware, it's bullshit. But you know what? I don't know. Nowadays, victory seems to go to the people who can spin a bullshit narrative, the venture capitalists, who don't really know what it is that they're investing in, but they have to invest their money. They got to get into something. Think of all the things that are in play right now, all the names that are in play. If you're sitting at a VC fund and you've got Kalshi and you got Polymark and you got everybody, you got names like Peter Thiel and others, all the money that's being poured into this, and you're trying to find, a cute angle to get into this thing right now. And some little bullshitter comes to you and they tell you like, oh, well, we've got this thing that's going to lap the sports books. When all it is just another way, it's slapping another label on what sports books already offer. And here's the thing. I don't think that necessarily this product is going to stand up in the way that, I don't know, the prediction markets want it to. Prediction markets, I don't think, want to go into micro betting because it makes them look more like what? Sports books. And as we drift further and further towards more critical litigation in higher and higher courts, they are trying to distance themselves, right? They are not going to try and look more and more like FanDuel and DraftKings. So, good luck to the kid. But again, I'm willing to bet that this is another one of these companies that you saw at the beginning of the sportsbook boom here, where everybody was telling you how they were going to revolutionize the industry and they were going to replace this. And the big D word, disrupt. God, that is the laziest fucking way of talking about a company, your product and everything like that. You're going to disrupt. Okay, go and disrupt. But I don't buy it. And I'm beginning to feel like at least one half of the grouchy old guys sitting up in the balcony at the Muppets today, because so far I'm underwhelmed by new product offerings. One of the biggest sportsbook companies on the planet, the number 2 company here in the US, and now, the little ankle biters who are now trying to find their way into our industry now, and they're going to try and sail in the slipstream of prediction markets and show us how it's all done. Teach me a lesson, guys.
All right, I doubt we're going to top that take for the rest of this show, but let's move on to something that's not necessarily a new product, but let's call it news item number 4 for the purpose of this segment. A deal announced yesterday making Sportradar an official data and solutions provider for Kalshi, giving Kalshi much of the same information Sportradar provides to traditional operators. A jump ball here. Adam, I think you had noted having some thought in our WhatsApp chat, so maybe a lean to nudge the jump ball in your direction for any initial reactions on this topic.
I only have one message, and it's for all those regulators out there. You keep talking a big game about anyone getting involved in prediction markets, and these companies continue to spit in your faces over and over and over again. Sportradar, FanDuel, DraftKings. When are one of you going to stand up, have a backbone, and start taking away or finding these licenses or whatever it is? It's a shame that it's gotten to this point. And I know we're a licensed one. I see Sportradar, the one that ultimately got fucked in this whole thing, now pulling up stumps and heading over to the other side. There has to be something here where if you're going to say something, stick to it. If not, shut up and move on. I mean, that's what it is at the end of the day. I mean, all these processing are in sweeps. These companies are all in these unregulated products in your own fucking backyard, yet nothing's being done. We're staying the path. We're going to continue this on, doing it this state-regulated way, but you're making it very bloody hard to do so. That's all I have on this topic.
All right. Adam sees Joe's hot take and raises with a dynamite take of his own. We'll see if we can maintain the momentum as we hit the home stretch for our final segment here, touching on SBC and then a bit more on the games themselves with the World Cup kickoff and the NBA and NHL finals continued, if you will. Starting with the SBC Summit Americas this week in Fort Lauderdale. Both of you guys will be attending in the Sunshine State. What are your expectations for this show, and what are you looking to take away from it?
0. I'm looking to take 0. I've got some catch-ups. Everybody's in one spot. The right drinking partners are in town. That's what I'm here for, catching up and whatnot. I will be on the floor all day Wednesday doing, seeing what there is and all the pretty products and all that stuff. But right now, all I'm trying to do is get New Jersey switched over, keep Ohio alive, and start taking bets Thursday on the World Cup that we've been waiting 4 fucking years for. So I'm sorry, SBC, you fucked this one up. Why on earth would you put it on these days, in this heat, in this place? So yeah, I'll be there tomorrow and that's it.
All right, Joe, how about you?
I think we both woke up on the wrong side of the bed today. One, I will be doing a panel along with some other folks this is on Thursday, a little gratuitous plug here, and that will be about how regulation may be standing in the way of innovation for the sportsbook world right now. Even during the setup call, I mean, these were all folks who were out of our industry. The amount of talk about prediction markets, you're going to have to keep a whip and a chair on people in these panels to keep them from being overtaken by prediction markets, which is funny because the prediction market guys are not going to be in this conference, at least only in a sub rosa way if they are. But beyond that, I always go to these things and I'm like, please, somebody bring something that's going to make me say, wow. I am interested in real innovation, which sounds funny after I beat up on the little munchkins over at SpeedLabs in the prior segment. I'm looking at something that really is new, that changes the form factor, is a new way of looking at the game and everything like that. And every time I go to a conference, that is what I'm looking for. And sadly, we're just not seeing it. What we see is a lot of reheating of existing models, of rebranding, changing the nomenclature, momentum markets, we're micro betting, we're spot betting, like how many different ways can we rebrand a product and still try and claim it's new? Really, that's what I'm on the hunt for. If you think, or if you know of, or you want to point me towards, or you have a product, customer-facing betting product that is unique, is new, it takes a different approach to this market than what are already the dominant paradigms in product presentation and form factor. I'm all ears, I'm all eyes, and I really want to see it. Beyond that, I will also be sitting with the right drinking partners in between. But that's the best way. That's the one really great thing about these industries. We get together, though infrequently. So when we do, it's amazing the amount of info you can glean if you're really listening in just 5, 6, 7, 8 hours of drinking with the right people in the industry. You can get a graduate education in sports betting.
All right, and with that, we will shift gears to the World Cup finally kicking off on Thursday, as we've mentioned, I don't know how many times on this show recently. Adam, which fixtures are seeing the most action for the first few days of the tournament, and where are the biggest liabilities at Prime Sports and BetChris?
Overall, again, France is the biggest overall on the outrights. On these games, Mexico's getting some early action in their first game. USA's getting early action in their first game. Some others that stood out was Brazil against Morocco. A lot of favorite action, not a lot of master action right now. Good 2A action, Ecuador, Ivory Coast. But, for me, and I'm changing my prediction on my World Cup, I've actually done some bit more work since last week. These are 2 teams that I've never backed in my life. They're strong teams, and that actually comes together for them right now. I'm changing to Germany versus Brazil in the final.
Wait a second. You're tailing my picks.
No, you didn't pick that one, no?
I picked that one last week. Roll back the tape.
Well, roll it back because Joe's got the winner. I've done the work. Going against the Mediterranean teams. I've never seen Brazil at 10-1. I had no idea they were at 10-1. So I'm going to just team up with Joe and go on the, Mayor of Toutsville, if that's what he picked last week. I didn't remember that. Didn't recall that. I know I had fucking Japan. And
Why would you trust anything that came out of my mouth when it came to picks?
he's obviously done his work and early on. So you got superpowers of my youth that I never, ever get to back at big odds. And they're big odds. So.
And that's the thing. And that's what I was saying last week. Have you ever seen such low expectations for two superpowers in this game in Brazil and Germany before this tournament? It's unreal.
There you go. And Joe and I would rarely agree on much. So this must be wrong.
And Joe, with Adam coming over to your side, you may be more inclined to double down, but I'm curious if anything has changed from your point of view when it comes to teams grabbing your attention, both from a fan perspective and a betting perspective.
You know what? I am really surprised at how little action the USA is getting, especially in their first game against Paraguay. You would expect like hometown heroes would be getting at least like they'd be getting a lot of square money, right? That just doesn't seem to be there right now. I mean, right now, what are they like? They're a really small favorite in most of the square sports books here right now, FanDuel, DraftKings. So I'm really surprised by that. I do think this is, rather than a pick, there's a suggestion. I think this is the tournament where Americans, even square ones, might want to start to learn what Asian handicaps are, because, not necessarily in the group stage, but when we get to the knockout stage, playing the handicap is something that's really interesting with the matchups, and as the teams get tighter and tighter as you move up the pyramid here. This is a great opportunity for Americans to learn about probably the predominant soccer betting format on the planet, not the, three-way betting that you have typical of like the UK market, but the Asian handicap market. It would be a brilliant thing. I mean, I know Joe Jr. is studying that like right now, like he wants to be a Rhodes Scholar on it out in Chicago this summer. But I think the rest of the country ought to wake up to it, because it really does open up a lot of possibilities when it comes to soccer betting for you.
And for those in the audience and people like myself who aren't too well versed in the Asian handicap, how would you describe it in a nutshell?
Yeah. And this I learned 31 years ago, and it took me about 2 years to understand it. So I can actually help you. So if you see minus a quarter, it means you get half your bet at 0 and half your bet at minus a half. And then obviously vice versa. It's confusing when you first see it, but it's actually very basic once you start playing it. And again, the visual world 30 years ago, when I was actually betting into Asia and wondering what the hell I was betting into. And then once I started to see my betting statements, it was like, okay, now I understand this. It's really pretty simple. But yeah, Joe's right. I mean, the Asian handicap is a perfect product for American bettors because they like their minus 110 both sides. And the only way generally you can get to a spot where you're getting minus 110 both sides in a soccer game is to look for the Asian handicap closest to pick'em. And that may be pick, which is just a draw, no bet. Either team wins, push if it's a draw. It may be flat 1 goal, where again, it's just same thing as a spread. But you'll quite often get, and I'm looking at it now, you've got on June 13th, you've got 1 3/4 Switzerland over Qatar. You've got minus 3/4 Brazil over Morocco. And you've got minus 3/4 Turkey over Australia. And these are the closest markets to pick'em or 50-50. So it's worthwhile becoming familiar with it. It's not as scary as it looks. It's pretty basic structure. Bet $100, you're getting 50 on 2 different pricings, which one can push, one can't, is generally what the rule of thumb is there.
Yeah. And the square, I mean, there's a couple of ways of presenting it. The square books will represent it as like minus a half point, minus a point. The sharper books, they'll represent it as like minus 0.75, so when something like, and I get it, like the first time you see is like, how on earth do I have a 3/4 point handicap here? But if you take your time, you learn this is a great opportunity to learn this. It's not like your Asian handicaps will go away after the World Cup. It's the predominant form of betting globally on the English Premier League, on the Champions League, and all those things. So it's a great opportunity because there's going to be a lot of games back to back to back that are going to be tight games where learning the formats, getting outside of your comfort zone and learning something new really could open up your betting opportunities for you.
And I've tried to limit my follow-ups today because we've had such a loaded rundown, but one more I'll throw your way, Adam. Sparked by Joe's note that the U.S. is perhaps surprisingly not as big of a favorite as many would have expected by now. How much of that do you attribute to the market just not being that big on Team USA? And how much of it could be boatloads of recreational money that, even though the World Cup is fast approaching, still hasn't yet hit the market and may do so between now and Team USA's first match kicking off?
For months, maybe even years, I've been shitting all over Team USA. And then I did some work. I mean, my first bets when I looked at these things, I'm like, I'm taking Paraguay plus a half. Are you going against the USA? Da, 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 da. Now that I've done some work on this thing, some not just top of the service things, diving into it, looking in the data, running what I trust some sort of people in this industry and whatnot, I think the USA can go deep. I think they'll actually be a lot better than expectations are coming up. And they're starting to get to a price where I think I might back USA in game one. I expect them to get every leg up possible to get as far as they can in this thing, whether that's an 89th minute penalty or something like that. But I've backed them at 80-1 to win this whole thing. I've done a few other things for them to reach different stages of this process. But yeah, they're starting to get to even money against Paraguay in game one and some other things like that. Yes, I've turned my take on this. And I suspect, if USA do win this first game, then there'll be a flood of money on them and they'll just become unbettable and I'll be against them every other game of the tournament, because that's what Americans do when they, get on a front runner. But USA is a bit like England, a bit like the Dallas Cowboys. There's really no faith in them these days. And until they show up, people aren't really believing. But I think this is a great opportunity for them. As I've said, they have one of the softest groups. Turkey is a tough one for them, I think, but they should get past Paraguay. Unfortunately, they should get past Australia. And they should have a run. And then once they get through the group stage, if they can win the group, they have a pretty easy setup. Not an easy, but an easier setup in the round of 32 and even potentially in the round of 16. So they're starting to go to a spot where it might just have to be cheering on the USA.
Oh, and to tail on something interesting about what Adam's saying, and this has come up with the coverage now that most of the squads have arrived here in the U.S. There's a couple of things that came out in like some of the tune-up games in U.S. stadiums, and then the weather. And that is the U.S. might have a slight advantage when it comes to tolerating the heat. They're just used to it, right? There's a few other teams that will be in the tournament that also come from, hot climates, but you're already seeing the European teams are all laid out on the field. Like just in practice, they look like they're going to die. The U.S. is used to playing in this heat, especially their MLS cohort is used to playing in this kind of heat. And here's the other one, giddy field conditions. When you look at the conditions that they had in Tampa last week and the sodding and things like that, U.S. men's national team, at least when they play here in the United States, are not playing on well-groomed pitches, with immaculate, unseamed grass. They're usually playing on makeshift fields that are repurposed football fields, or they've been resodded over short terms. Though they're used to playing, I guess it's like used to playing in shitty basketball gyms. It'll be kind of like the supposed advantage that the old Boston Celtics supposedly had in the Boston Garden with that parquet floor, that it was warped and they knew where the weird bounces were and things like that. And they were just able to use it as a serious home court advantage over visiting teams. It really slowed them down. So you could say that could be a possible advantage that the U.S. has over the competition between their durability to endure the heat with their athleticism as well. And then also tolerating absolute crap conditions that, especially the European clubs, they would never, ever, they wouldn't take the field at home if they saw some of those conditions.
Yeah, and to go another level on that, and just to give another tip on that, that's where I'm looking at some of these games where England are playing at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Texas or Florida and things like that. that accumulative couple of 1 p.m. games, a couple of days apart, the heat and those kind of things are something to look at that not others are looking at. Plus, this year, you got to play an extra game. The attrition rate in this World Cup, I think, is going to throw up some really good surprises for both bettors and bookies. But the depth that you can go into and the rabbit holes you can go down to in this stuff is endless. But that was definitely one highlight that I've been looking deep into the last week or so.
And Adam, we'll keep it with you to take us home with two events less prone to impact from extreme weather or field conditions. The NBA and NHL finals march on. So give us a look into how the action's developing for both series at Prime Sports and BetCris for upcoming Game 4s, as well as any futures. And last but not least, who you expect to see take home the Larry O'Brien Trophy and the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, so Stanley Cup, we need the Knights. Game 4 for tonight. Looking at about 68% of the money on the Hurricanes. No real master action at this point in time, but be nice just for the Knights to go on and win that. But as I said, the volume that we've been getting on these back and forth is worthwhile going a little bit deeper for a little bit more fun. And then on the NBA, again, Knicks on the series, we've needed them from day one. Early money is showing up on the Knicks. It's about 84% of the money and 100% of the master money on the Knicks for Game 4 so far. Same on the money line. It's heavy there. So I think people are just seeing a little blip on the radar for the Knicks last night, and they'll come in, win Game 4, go back, Spurs will win Game 5. I mean, I don't know when the last time there's been a series in the NBA where the first 3 games were won by the away team. I'm not a statistician or whatnot, but feels like it'll be digging a long way back to see when that last happened. So, maybe it'll go 4 in a row for the away teams. We will see.
All right, we will go ahead and call it on that note. To everyone still with us, thanks for sticking around for what might go down as our longest show yet. No shortage of intrigue on or off the field. Hopefully you found some value in Adam's and Joe's unique insights. Thanks as always for tuning in. Enjoy the late stages of the NBA and NHL finals and the early stages of the World Cup, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Prime Suspects. Register for Prime Sports at primesports.com and download the Prime Sports app. You can follow us on Twitter at @PrimeSuspects_, at Joe Brennan Jr., and at Adam Bjorn. You must be 21 or over to play on Prime Sports. Always bet responsibly and within your limits. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER.